and there would be the appearance of a false Messiah who would give claim that they can save the world. Everyone is always afraid about dying. But Jesus and the scripture would always warn us about spiritual death. In Matthew chapter 24, we find how the disciples at the Mount of Olives came to Jesus and started asking questions to him. And the scripture tells us that they were private questions, which means it was quite intimate between them and their teacher. And they wanted to have some knowledge from him. So the disciples asked Jesus what would be the sign of the end. That was what they wanted to know from their teacher. Then Jesus talked about, "For many will come in my name saying, I am the Messiah. You will hear about wars and rumors of wars, and they must take place, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nations, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All this, but this is just the beginning of the birth pangs." These are something very common, where throughout history, many records are there to prove of all these which have been spoken about had already happened. Then from verses 9 onwards till the verse 12, Jesus started talking about the persecution. And Jesus told his disciples that you will be handed over. And Jesus warned his disciples of what will happen when the persecution will begin. When the believers will be handed over, Jesus warned the disciples and said, "Many will fall away from their faith, and many will betray one another." And betrayal is not about from other people who do not believe in the gospel. But here, betrayal means one to another inside the church. Then there will be hatred amongst one another. There will rise many false prophets, and there will be lawlessness, and love will be cold. These was something which Jesus told the disciples. When all of this shall begin, it will be totally different from what have happened in the previous warnings that he said were just like earthquake and famine. But Jesus in verses 9 to 12 gave a little bit more precise of the things which can happen, of the sign of the coming of age. But then Jesus said to his disciples, "But the one who stands till the end, who endures till the end, will be saved." And also Jesus said, whatever the case may be, the gospel should reach first to the ends of the earth, then the end will happen. And then he further said after that, the real warning would come when there would be someone who would sit as God at the temple, claiming themselves to be God. Or rather, we would say, they would be the ones who would dictate about worship and worship whom. At that time, then Jesus warned to the disciples and said, if that would have started to happen, What then should you do? Jesus said, flee to the mountain. And if you are at the housetop, do not come down. Don't go back. Which means flee. Just flee away. And then Jesus said, if you are there in the fields, do not turn back to come and get your coat. Once you've moved, keep moving. Do not turn back. And then Jesus also says, pray. That is what Jesus told the disciples. And that is what Jesus told the disciples to tell you and to tell me, that we should pray that it should not happen during the winter or on a Sabbath. It was a warning that Jesus told the disciples something very important that they should pray about. And then Jesus kept on educating his disciples or his students that they would be sure about being prepared, and so that they can share the same knowledge to the people behind following them, that they should know then. After that, there would be a great suffering. And there would be the appearance of a false Messiah who would give claim that they can save the world. Salvation here would mean then in many aspects. Salvation from the economic crisis, salvation from the health crisis, salvation from the spiritual crisis, salvation from all the different kinds of crises. But Jesus warned that these will be false Messiah, because salvation can come only from one source, and that is what Jesus wanted to educate to his disciples. And then further, Jesus warned them there will be many cosmic disturbances. But then further ahead of that, the question still then arises, when will it happen? And beautifully, Jesus instructed his disciples and said, from verse 37 onwards, Jesus spoke to his disciples and said, for as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the flood came and swept them all away, so too will be the coming of the Son of Man. This was what Jesus warned the disciples about. He cited an example from what had already happened from the past history. Just as it happened during the days of Noah, Jesus said it will again happen in the same way. Because no one really cared about the spiritual death. People were more concerned about the physical death. It is something that we should keep in mind, because many of us are really more worried about dying physically. All the different organizations that we find in the entire world, everyone is busy thinking about physical death. And you would find what happened immediately, even after Jesus died. The disciples, they forgot what Jesus talked with them. They turned back to their old profession, and they forgot about Jesus. Until the resurrected Christ went and met them, revived the calling, and continued to do the ministry of sharing to the people what Jesus had shared to them. Be prepared. Look at the signs around you. Matthew in chapter 24, verse 44, puts the word of Jesus Christ when he said, therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour.